How's it going, guys? Football-ManagerYouthDevelopment.co.uk here. In this episode, we're going to take a look at 3 things that you can try and do to make sure that when you're loaning out a youth player on Football Manager, that it's as successful as possible. If this is the first time you're watching a video on the channel and you're interested in learning a lot more about Football Manager, this channel provides you with quite a lot of tips on tactics and things like that. So please do subscribe to the channel if you're looking for Football Manager tips. So the first thing that we're going to check out is just making sure that your player is prepared to go out on loan, basically. It's going to be really important to make sure that your player has got a decent personality in order to go out on loan. If possible, it's always a good idea to try and tutor your youth players at a really young age, and if possible, to try and get them a good personality. I would try and recommend that you try and get them a professional personality, as when they do go out on loan, that's going to benefit them a lot more than if they had, say, like a balanced personality, for example. It's going to be also a good idea to take a look at the player age. General kind of rule of thumb for myself is I don't send any player out on loan if he's 16. If a player is 17, then I generally don't send them out unless they're absolutely amazing and they definitely do need to, they're ready for first team football. At the age of 18, if a player's not in my first team, that is probably the better age for them to start going out on loan. So do take into consideration the player age when you are going to be sending out players on loan, and make sure that you're not sending them out on loan when they're too young. Another thing to think about is the current ability of a player. So whenever you go into the coach report screen for any player on Football Manager, you will be able to see what their current ability is. For example, if you're managing in England and you're looking at one of your young players, it might say that he's currently suitable for League 2 football, for example, or League 1 football. And that will give you an indication of the type of club that you should try and loan him out to. Obviously, when you do loan your youth player out, you don't want to be loaning them into a league where it's not really going to be a challenge for him. And on the other foot, you don't exactly want to be loaning him out to a club where he's going to be struggling on loan. So I would really recommend that you take a look at the current, the coach reports, take a look at the current ability of the player and try and match him up with a club that matches his current ability. The second thing that's always a good thing to have a look at is to check out the facilities of the club that you're loaning your player to. Obviously, if you're managing a big club on Football Manager, for example Chelsea or Arsenal, then the chances are that you're going to have very, very good facilities at your club, and that any club that you loan your player to is not going to have as good of facilities as you have at your club. You can always have a look at what clubs are interested in your players and maybe just have a little look through and just sort of see which clubs do have the better facilities. The facilities that you're going to be interested in are the training facilities, and it's going to be a very good idea to just make sure that you're loaning your player to a club that have got the best training facilities as possible. I do also like to take a real quick look at the manager of the club that you're loaning your player to. I really don't know if it makes a difference, but I do take a real quick look at the attribute of the other manager and what he's like with working with younger players. I would like to do an experiment on that one day, but I would like to think it would have some impact on the progress that your player might make on loan. If the manager is not very good at working with youngsters, then you might want to consider sending him to a club where a manager has got a good attribute in that area. My third and final tip is to check out the league position of the club that you're loaning your player to. Obviously, in the summer, it's not always going to be possible as the league season's not started yet, but you can always have a look at the media prediction of where the club could potentially finish during the season or where they're expected to finish. If you get more towards the sort of January transfer window and you're loaning out a player to a club, then of course you'll obviously know their league position, and that should have an impact on where you are loaning your youth player. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you are loaning a player out to a team that's going to be struggling, it's going to be very difficult for your youth player to make an impact. If you imagine you're loaning your youth player out to a club that's really struggling in the current league that they're playing in, it's going to be very difficult for him to go in, have confidence and sort of have really high morale in order to make sure that he's going to be performing at his best. If he's playing for a club that's doing really well in the league, you would expect that the other players at that club are going to have high morale, that they're all going to be playing well, and that's going to be a lot better for your youth player to flourish whilst he is out on loan. Of course, for younger players, it's always going to be a good idea to try and make sure that their morale is as high as possible. So where possible, always do try and check out the league position of the club that you're loaning out your youth player to, and that should have a good impact on where you're loaning out your youth players to. So these were just 3 really simple little tips just to make sure that when you are loaning out youth players on Football Manager, that the loan spell is as successful as it can be. Obviously, in an ideal world, you would look to try and develop players at your own club, but obviously one of the key things of developing youth players on Football Manager is to make sure that they're getting as much game time as possible. I've mentioned this a lot of times in my videos, but the 3 things I always work on with developing youth players is making sure that they're tutored, taking a look at their training, and also making sure that they're getting enough game time. Of course, at your club, you can check on the progress of if they're tutored, and you can also take control of their training. But obviously, if a player's not ready for first team football at your club, the only way for him to get first team experience is to go out on loan. So obviously, making sure that your player is tutored first with a decent personality is going to probably be one of the better things for you to do when he's really young, just to make sure that you get that out of the way. Make sure that at the ages of like 16 and 17 that he's getting really good training at your club as well, and that you're focusing on developing the attributes that he needs to be developed in. And then the last piece of the puzzle is just making sure that he can get that game time. So yeah, sending players out on loan is something that I do quite often, but yeah, you do definitely need to make sure that your players are prepared in order for that loan spell to be successful. I'm going to call this the end of the video, guys, but if this video has helped you and you are looking for more Football Manager tips, then do make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back very soon for some more Football Manager videos. Thanks for watching.